So the point of that idea that masculinity is achieved and that femininity is ascribed is there's an idea basically in Western society or in the United States that men are made but women occur naturally. That men, you can fail at being a man, whereas you can't, this sort of man up or be a man is possible. If it's possible to succeed at being a man, then it's possible to fail at being a man, which is nonsense. Everyone is who they are. But there's an idea that you can't fail at being a woman in the same way. And so femininity is somehow natural. Menstrual cycle is tied to the moon or something like that. It's not necessarily exclusive to the United States, but it does sort of affect the way we view ourselves, and gives a lot of pressure on boys, and young men to conform, or be seen as failures. I think a lot of this murder, suicide, and depression and violence can be connected to just ordinary status, feelings of loss of status because they were challenged, their masculinity was challenged. That doesn't really happen for women in the same way. There's plenty of mean stuff going on, but it doesn't affect, it doesn't challenge the overall sort of status in the same way. In any case, something to think about. I thought it was an interesting video. Oh, I have something for you here. Just a little funny. Hold on. Here we go. If Indiana Jones had really been an archaeologist, it would have been Indiana Jones and the accursed post holes, Indiana Jones and the imperiled ceramics conference, Indiana Jones and the fastidious bibliography, Indiana Jones and the quest for phantom grants. There's a little bit of humor in there. Gender stratification generally involves dominance of men and subordinate status of women in society. This is how it normally happens. Men are dominant over women. It has to do with the prioritizing of men's work and the prioritizing of women's work, and how that works out in agricultural societies. In bands, it's much different, of course. It really has to do with control over resources. In bands, the degree of equality in marriage depends most closely on the economic productivity of women, how much food the wives contribute to the family. In societies where gathering is emphasized, where women do more gathering, marriages are more equal. There's less abuse of wives by husbands. I think we've talked about this before. Gathering involves smaller sizes of takes, greater frequency. It's less exciting or prestigious work. For the Kung in South Africa, it's nuts. For the Miriam in the South Pacific, it's shellfish. This is what women do. Women gather the nuts. Women gather up the shellfish. In societies where hunting, and you can see, one is nuts and one is fish. So it's not plant food versus animal food. It's just the size of the take and the prestige of the take, and the frequency of it. In societies where hunting is emphasized, where men do more hunting, marriages are less equal. There's more abuse of wives by husbands. This is because hunting is larger sizes, lower frequency. It's more exciting or prestigious. So we could say that in the Arctic, where pretty much everything is either a seal, a game fish, or a caribou, there's very little vegetation and few shorelines that have shellfish on them because a lot of permafrost, a lot of frozen ice. And so really, men control the economy, and as a result, there's abuse and exploitation to a much greater extent that you would expect in a hunter-gatherer society. Most other hunter-gatherer societies, band societies, don't have that. So gender discrimination involves laws and social pressures that apply to women only, and that severely restrict their mobility and independence. For example, in Saudi Arabia, the ban until last year, I think they finally overturned it, ban on women driving. It has nothing to do with religion. It just has to do with control of women by men. Environmental inequality. I mean, there's a justification that has to do with religion, but that it doesn't have to do with any other Muslim society. Doesn't have that. I mean, right next door you have Emirates, or you have Qatar, you have Kuwait, you have Jordan, and all of these places women drive, and all these places are very religious. Muslim societies and women drive all the time. So it doesn't have to do with religion, I would say, or else it would be more in Iran, right? Women drive in Iran. It's an Islamic republic. So it doesn't have to do with religion. It has to do with patriarchy, male control over women's bodies. Environmental inequality, access to water. Water shortages. 2/3 of the world will face water shortages in the next 5 years, mostly in the developing world. These are poor countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. In agriculture, water inequality results in different foods. It comes about because different foods demand different levels of investment in fresh water. So beef cattle demand 20 times the water inputs as other sources of protein, like chicken. But beef is a high prestige meat that rich people pay a lot of money for beef, and so they could be raising chickens or beans, but they wouldn't make as much money per acre on it, so they switched to beef, even though it's killing them in Argentina and Brazil and other places where they don't have secure water sources, or Utah or Colorado or something like that. California, not a lot of water out there. I'm not talking Michigan. Water privatization attempts to turn purified water into a privately traded commodity such that only the wealthy will be able to afford it easily. When you make it possible to have it only through money, then if you have no money, you don't have it. And if you have lots of money, then you have lots of it. It's a terrible situation to be in if you're poor. And it's strongly opposed by the masses wherever it's been tried. Although not in the U.S., because we don't have the same kind of activism here. Violence and war, conflict types. There's a raid that involves a short-term incursion with a specific goal in mind. Members of the group aim to steal or recover items, animals, or people from another group in the same society, usually a neighboring village. Then there's a feud, and if there's a raid, then you got to settle it, because you can't live at war with your neighbors. Feud is a long-term hostile relationship between two groups in which revenge is the goal, could potentially last generations. So neighboring tribes or neighboring clans within the same tribe are feuding with one another, and it doesn't get settled. Usually if someone kills someone else, you pay the cow, or you pay the 3 cows, or you pay the, whatever, slaves or family members, you figure out some way to pay it off, and then it's over. But if the people who were wronged don't accept that, then it just keeps going. Warfare, large-scale violence involving the whole country against another whole country, or parts of a country against other parts of the country, and that would be a civil war. The goal is to injure the other side. In warfare, the goal is it's a contest of injury, as Clausewitz would say. Injure the other side until they sue for peace and make concessions. He also said it was politics by other means. And that's that's the government's definition of war. The warrior's definition of war is injury, contest of injury. Victory in warfare assumes that the other side has enough political development that leaders can speak on behalf of the people. So chiefdoms and states can be formally conquered in war, but bands and tribes cannot be formally conquered. If you do not recognize the political structure that you are fighting in a war, you will never win it. Check out, for example, the Palestinians. For many years, the state of Israel did not recognize the Palestinians as a nation, as a government, and therefore wouldn't negotiate with them, which means you don't have anybody to surrender, who's going to surrender to you. So there was no surrender, and even today, there's no surrender, so there's no peace. You cannot claim to have won until you have a peace treaty. The people say, yes, I give up. If they haven't given up, then it's not over. The war is still ongoing. Conquest, purchase, and terra nullius. Warfare was used in the colonial period to produce and define the territory of the current nation states. So it used to be controlled by tribes or bands or chiefdoms, and now it's controlled by the United States, for example, the territory of the United States. The problem comes in how to dispossess these people in acephalous, that is, no head or leaderless bands and tribes, when they don't have leaders who will speak on behalf of the whole group. It is very difficult to take legal possession or legally take possession of land without buying it or conquering it. You can buy it or you can conquer it, but you can't just take it because we are a nation of laws. So the conquerors needed an individual owner who could sell the land, or a political leader who could sign the treaty on behalf of the group that handed over the land. Either you get someone who says, yes, I own the land, and if you give me $10,000, I'll give you the land, and I'll sign my name here that I sold it. Or you have someone who says, yes, I'm the boss of these people, and we have these 10,000 acres, and we will, if you keep shooting at us and put a gun to my head and say surrender, and if I say no, then you kill me. Then you get someone else who's the next leader, and you tell them surrender. And so eventually, someone is going to say, okay, yes, I surrender on behalf of my people. I give you that land in exchange for 10,000 acres in Oklahoma or whatever. So you keep trying that until you get someone who says, on behalf of my people, I give up, and then it's over. Uh, the problem is how to find someone in an autocephalous group. No one's going to say, "Yeah, I'm the boss," because I mean, unless everyone else says, "Yeah, he's the boss," which he's not really the boss, which happens sometimes. And sometimes, they're really strict. They wouldn't lie. And somebody says, "Who's your leader?" They say, "We don't have one." Who's going to sign this treaty? I'm not signing it. I don't own the land. The land belongs to God. Who's your boss? I'm not the boss. I'm just a normal person like anyone else. So this presents a problem for the European leaders, because they cannot get this land. So let's stop here and come back to it.